I'm curious, when was the last time that you raised your fee for your therapy services? Do you struggle with knowing why, when, and how to raise your rates? Well, then today's episode is just for you. I'll talk about why it's important to raise your fee, when to do it, and give you some practical action steps for how you can implement a fee increase.
Hey, Christian therapist, are you craving a counseling career that aligns with your faith and actually supports your well being? Welcome to the Prosperous Christian Therapist Podcast. I'm Kimberly Van Hooser, Christian therapist, private practice owner, and business coach for mental health professionals like you. In this podcast, you'll get practical strategies and faith led guidance to help you build a thriving private practice, one that serves your clients well and makes an impact for the kingdom of God. So, what are you waiting for? Grab your notebook and join me for today's episode.
Thank you for listening to the Prosperous Christian Therapist Podcast. I'm your host, Kimberly Van Hooser. Over 10 years ago, I started my private practice, even though I had no idea what I was doing. I was truly acting out of obedience to a call that the Lord had put on my heart. It wasn't an easy route, and there were definitely times when I wanted to give up, but I'm sure glad that I didn't. Being in private practice has been so rewarding, and I'm now blessed to be a mentor and coach for therapists who want to build a private practice, specifically the one that God has placed on their hearts. These podcast episodes are meant to provide you with guidance on how to build and grow your own private practice while staying rooted in the Lord, as well as hopefully an encouragement to stay in it even when things feel tough. In today's episode, we'll be talking about raising your fee. I'll give you the why, the when, and the how. Now, I've been working with my first group coaching cohort, and we just recently did a week on building a financially sustainable practice. And I talked about how to know how much you need to be bringing in your practice every single month in order to meet your income goals and needs. And part of that is to make sure that you're charging the fee that you need to charge. And in most cases, when people are not charging the fee they need to charge, it means they're charging something less than. So, when that's the case, how do you then raise your fee? Now, this is an area that I believe a lot of clinicians struggle with. Part of it is not knowing when it's appropriate to raise a fee or how to do that, but there's a big piece of why raising a fee is important to do. Because I notice so many clinicians carry a lot of guilt for needing to increase a fee or to be charging a rate that is actually something that's going to make their business sustainable. So that's why I thought it was important to do a podcast episode on this topic. So let's start with the very practical why it is important to raise your fee from time to time and the rationale behind it. So, just very practically, I don't know if all of you have noticed inflation happens, cost of living increases. In order to keep up with increased overhead costs and just the cost of living, you need to increase your fee. It is quite common for many jobs to give annual raises to account for increases in cost of living. So, this is essentially what you're doing when you raise your fee. Another reason why it makes sense to raise your fee is the longer that you work as a therapist, the more experienced you hopefully become. So, as you raise your fee, it's not just because you want more money, but you actually carry more value in the services that you offer. So, that justifies, in my mind, the need to raise your fee. Now, I'm also a big fan of therapists not just barely scraping by. You did not go to grad school and likely invest in your graduate degree just to be able to eat peanut butter and jelly every single day and to barely pay your rent. So sometimes therapists need to raise their fees so they can actually live a life that is the life that they want to live. Now, I'm not talking about being overly greedy or focused on having all sorts of possessions from the income you bring in from your clients. It is actually healthy and okay to desire some financial stability. It is okay to want to have enough money to fund your hobbies and interests. I think that we actually show up better as clinicians when we're not running on fumes all the time. And usually we need some finances in order to be able to show up well for our clients. Whenever I raise my fees, I think it's also a valuable time that helps clients reevaluate their need and desire for therapy. I have a lot of clients who really enjoy coming to session and they're relatively high functioning clients. They're not using the therapy as a crutch, but they just see it as a healthy way of accountability, of checking in, of self evaluating. So I'm happy to continue working with them. But whenever I increase a fee, they always take time to see, like, is this something that I'm still wanting and desiring and needing in my life right now? Or do I actually want to take a break? And I don't see that as a bad thing if they choose to wrap up. So sometimes increasing fees, people have some fear that they're going to lose clients. And it's highly possible that you will lose a couple of clients when you increase your fees. But what I found is it's usually not due to the financial constraint of increasing the fee, but actually due to the client not really needing the therapy anymore. And so it's valuable for them to recognize that and then to be able to move on from therapy for the time being. So there are a lot of good reasons for why it's important to make sure that we're assessing our fee and increasing it when needed. Now, let's talk about the when you increase your fee. I think a good rule of thumb is to increase your fee annually. I typically will take time to assess my rate at least once a year and then to make the changes. I personally don't like to increase my fee more than once a year. I don't really see the need to do that. However, it's possible that you might need to increase your fee more than once a year. Let's say that you're ending up needing to reduce significantly your one to one client hours. So you're going to have fewer time slots to offer people. Yet at the same time, you need to be making a certain amount of income in order to sustain your business. Sometimes those changes are unexpected or unanticipated, so you might need to actually raise your fee more than once a year. But in general, a good rule of thumb, take time to assess what you're charging people, what you're making, and implement a fee increase. Whatever your policies with raising your fee are, you just want to have it very clearly communicated to clients. So in my intake paperwork, I do have listed that I will increase my fee at least once a year, but that I will provide them with at least 30 days notice if ever I need to increase a fee. You can change that timeline however you want. I'll generally give clients a 60-day notice when I'm actually implementing a fee increase, but at least my if I miss that deadline by a few days, because sometimes I'm not always thinking about it 2 months in advance, I have at least a 30-day window where I'm able to still notify my clients that's in alignment with what my consent documents and paperwork says. You can also choose to not raise your fee for your current clients, and maybe you just raise your fee for incoming clients. If I have a client who's been sitting on a pretty low fee for a while, or maybe an old fee, I will still increase it, especially if they've been seeing me for over a year at their current rate. But if there is significant financial need, and I know even just a $10 increase or $5 increase might really be something that is distressing for the client, I evaluate if that's something that I can still offer them. So you can play around with how you raise your fee and who you raise it for, but I would encourage you to just make sure on average you're bringing in the fee that you need to make per session. And if you need some more information on how to do that, how to set the right amount and know what you need to charge, check out my episode 33 on how to set a sustainable fee for your private practice. But remember, this is your business, and part of the glory of private practice is that you get to do things that work for you and work well for your clients. Just make sure that you are making sure it's working for you and not just working for your clients. Okay, so we talked about the why it's important to raise your rate. We talked about when you should raise your rates. Next, let's talk about how to raise your rates. So, just to reiterate, make sure you have it really clearly defined in your intake paperwork, your policy with raising fees, how often you might choose to do it, and what your process is if you are going to need to increase your rate with clients. However, we don't want to assume that our clients have fully read all of their paperwork or that they would even remember our process for raising fees when the time comes to raise your fee. So, how I generally handle things is making sure I send written notice to all of my clients, letting them know in advance that I will be increasing my rates. I let them know what the rate increase is. And I also ask them to please reach out to me and communicate if that is something that they perceive to be a concern. I will typically try to do this at least 60 days in advance from when I will implement my new rate. I will then also, when it's 30 days in advance, send out an additional notice just to remind clients that their rate increase is coming. If this is something that is a concern for them, to please make sure they let me know. I will also take time to verbalize to clients in sessions, especially when I believe it could be a cause of concern for them. And I want to make sure that they're okay with it and that I give them the space to talk to me about it. So I will actually say in a session, hey, I just want to check in to make sure you got my notification about the fee increase. Is that all okay with you? If I have a client who is really struggling financially or struggling to decide if they have the means to pay for therapy, then there's a point of conversation. Generally speaking, if that's the case, I might choose to not increase the fee or just do a very minimum increase. And my reason for even increasing it, maybe even $5, is just for them to reassess how much they truly value the therapy and if it's something that they're needing. I know a lot of therapists struggle with talking about money with their clients. Clients struggle with talking about money to us too. It's an uncomfortable topic. So, we as a therapist need to be mature enough to be able to talk about money with clients to let them know it's okay if you feel some discomfort on this level. I want to be able to assist you in your clinical needs. How can we find a way to make that happen? You might have to refer out clients if they are saying they're unwilling or unable to pay the fee and it's not something where you can reduce anymore, then have a list of referrals for them who might be able to accommodate the fee that they're needing. So let's talk about some action steps you can take away from this episode. First of all, I want you to assess if the fee is actually bringing in the amount of income that you need or if that's something that you need to change. And you can reference my episode 33 if you need help with that. Second of all, I want you to pick a time during the year when you are going to raise your rate. You don't always have to do it in January. A lot of clinicians choose to do it in the new year. I personally get too busy sometimes during the holidays leading up to it that I forget to send notices on time. So a lot of times I will raise my rate in the springtime. Just make sure that you're checking in and evaluating and set a date at least once a year to make sure that you're implementing a fee increase. Next, I want you to think about your process for how you are going to implement that fee and make sure that your paperwork is all up to date, including your fee raising policy. So, hopefully, those are some good action steps that you can take away from what we've talked about today and start to implement in your practice. If you're struggling with feeling guilty about possibly raising your fee, make sure that you tune in to next week's episode where I'll be talking about money guilt. That is something that a lot of us deal with as clinicians. We have such a caring and compassionate heart. We want to be able to help as many people as possible, and we don't want money to be a barrier. But a lot of times, our guilt is actually keeping us stuck. It's keeping us from being able to reach more people and setting healthy boundaries with our clients. If you need some one on one guidance figuring out your fee raising policy, what might be an appropriate fee for you, and how to do that with your clients, that's something that I can help with in a one to one coaching call. Feel free to reach out to me. I'll leave my contact information for how to book in the show notes below. Thanks so much for listening to today's episode. If you have any feedback, feel free to leave me a review or comment on this episode. I'd love to have you share it with a colleague if it's something that you find useful or beneficial. And feel free to connect with me. I send out a weekly newsletter that has faith led encouragement for clinicians and will also keep you up to date on any of my most recent special offers for coaching or any upcoming webinars or events that I'm planning. Have a great rest of your week. If you found value in today's episode, would you leave a written review on Apple Podcasts? It helps other faith-led clinicians like you find the show. And don't forget to join my free Facebook community, Start and Grow Your Private Practice as a Christian Therapist, where you'll join other clinicians for encouragement, accountability, and free tips and support. See you there!